Good morning, everyone. I'm Lou Sabino, Director of Admission and Financial Aid here at Overlake. So glad that you can join us this morning for an ALS talk. And for many of these, we have specific themes. And today's theme is really just the admission process. I know many of you have already started the application process. Some of you are probably just starting to think about the application process. Many of you probably have questions about admissions and the admissions process here at the school. And so that's really what today is about. I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about Overlake, about the admission process, really anything that comes to your mind. So a few sort of things to think about for today. I will be answering questions live, and you should see on your screen on the right-hand side a Q&A section. So if you type questions into that section, it'll come to me, and I'll try and read them as we go through this event. I know some of you had submitted questions ahead of time, and so I will try and address some of those. So I think what we'll do to start is I'll just say a few things about Overlake and the admission process. And then hopefully that should answer some of those questions that you submitted ahead of time. And then if you have additional questions, like I say, feel free to type them in on the right-hand side of your screen, and I'll be able to address them. So I am going to say again, welcome to those of you, because I see the numbers are climbing a little bit. So there are people who are just joining us. And so thanks for being here today. What I think I'll do actually to start is share my screen. So I'm just going to show you a few resources, and I think it's a good way to sort of introduce you to the school and the admission process, and maybe answer some of those questions that some of you have to start out. So bear with me a second here as I share my screen. And hopefully, oops, I think I need to send it live. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen now. And so this is our website. And so I think as you all are thinking about jumping into this process and learning a little bit more about the school, this is a really a great resource. We've put a lot of effort in over the last couple of years to build up the information that's on this website. And as we have jumped into this COVID world and the ability to have people on campus and to have those conversations in person has become limited, we've tried to add some additional resources in here, and we'll continue to add stuff as we go through the season. So, from this main page, you can find out a lot of information about the school by just sort of clicking here on the menu and choosing a section. So if you want to learn a little bit more about, say, our academic curriculum, you click under the academic section, and there's a whole curriculum section. So you can learn just sort of a curriculum overview, let that load here, and about what we're doing in the middle school and the upper school. We've got department by department sections here, which include among them philosophy, course sequences, and then individual descriptions of what's being covered in each course. So if you're looking for some of that basic information, the website's a wonderful resource for that. It has other information in here too, which I think is really valuable for families who are considering the school. So we've got information about experiential education. Within sort of the student experience section, we've got information about athletics, I know some people have questions about college counseling. There's a college counseling section here, including a report to colleges, which gives you a picture of where some of our kids go to school. And then a big one I know for many families is, how am I going to get to school? And so we've got a whole section here on transportation, including our routes map. So obviously right now we're in a remote learning situation, but when we do get back to being on campus, we do have a full bus service. And so from this page, you can see where the stops are on any given day. The routes run a couple times in the morning, a couple times in the afternoon, and so you can really see sort of where the stops are and relative to where you live and what might be convenient. I will say that this changes a little bit each year depending on sort of where students live and what the realities of where we can stop buses and that kind of thing. But by and large, this is pretty consistent on a year-to-year basis. So I know that's always a question for many families, understandably so. So the website, like I say, is a great resource for learning about the school and including the admission process. So within the admission section of the website, there's some good information, some basic overviews of what's involved in the process. So you've got all these different steps here with sort of basic descriptions of what is to be expected. But the key thing here is this link up here, and this is a link to Ravenna, which is the system that we use to manage our application. It is a system that many of the schools in this area, many of the independent schools and private schools in this area use to manage their application as well. And so as families who are going through the process, it's really valuable because it allows you to sort of have a one-stop shop for your application process. In some cases, for schools that are a part of the Puget Sound Independent Schools group, of which we're a member, we have common application forms. So for certain elements, you can submit the form once and it'll go to multiple schools, which just lessens the workload of applying to schools. And for many schools, including ours, a lot of event management takes place through Ravenna. So signing up for different kinds of events is kind of the way to do it. So just to give you a sense of what that looks like, this is, apologies. I think I closed the wrong tab. Well, I'll show you the preview in a little bit. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. Bear with me here. Let's see if I can figure out how to do that. Okay, I think I'm back. So I'll try and figure out how to get the Ravenna system up so that you all can see that. But within the Ravenna application page, you can see all the different elements to the application, and including things that are due, your progress in the application, when you submit something, when we actually receive it and process it. So it's a great way to manage the application process. So that's sort of a basic introduction to the process. As I said, I know a few people have jumped in here since we've started, so I'll just repeat myself and say welcome. I'm Lucy Bina, Director of Admission Financial Aid. I'm here really to answer as many questions as you have about the admission process or Overlake, or really anything that you have questions about. And so you should see a question and answer box on the right-hand side of your screen. Feel free to type the question in there, and I'm happy to answer it. So I see actually we got one question in, and it's an issue that I know has come up recently, and so might as well just address it. So when it comes to the admission process, one of the things that we require typically is standardized testing for all of our applicants in a normal year. applicants to grades 5 through 12. This year, we made the decision because of challenges around testing access that we would continue to require standardized testing for applicants to grades 6 through 11, but we made standardized testing optional for applicants to grade 5. We typically accept test scores from one of two tests, the SSAT or the ISEE. Both of those organizations have made a lot of progress in the last 6 or 7 months, transitioning to at-home tests. So both of those organizations, the ISEE already had a computer-based test that you could take at a Prometrics test site. They created one that you could take at home. The SSAT has traditionally been a paper-based test. They created a computer-based test that you can either take at a Prometrics test site or at home. And so both of those organizations have those tests available. Now the ISEE is available for applicants to all grades. The at-home and computer version of the SSAT was only available for applicants to grades 6 through 11. So we made the decision to make the standardized testing optional for applicants to grade 5, but required it for applicants to grades 6 through 11. So one of the things that's come to our attention is that SSAT has had some technical issues with their technology partner in executing the at-home test. And so we found out over the weekend that they've suspended registration for that test. And so we put a notice up on the website yesterday saying that, we know about it and we're looking into it, and we're having conversations with our different testing partners to understand sort of what the actual situation is and what that means for families who are in the process in terms of their accessibility to tests, and whether or not we need to make some kind of change to our admission requirements. So we don't have a decision about that because we're still collecting information. It's a really new situation. But as soon as we do, we will post that information both to our website and to Ravenna. I will say that, regardless of the situation with SSAT, the ISEE is still available. And again, you can still take that either at home or Prometrics test site. So that is still a test that's available to everyone. So I think we addressed that one. And so I have a question here asking if I could highlight one aspect of the academic area and the athletic area that makes Overlake unusual, or of which you are particularly proud. So that's a great question. Actually, I think what, one of the questions that I think families often have as they go through this process is what makes Overlake different. If you're looking at a number of schools, we, particularly as independent schools, use a lot of the same language to describe ourselves. Structurally, we can look pretty similar from the outside. And so I think as a family who's considering school options, it can be really challenging to figure out, what makes one school different from another. So, when people ask me sort of what differentiates Overlake, I think that there are really three things that in combination with one another differentiate Overlake from other school options. So many other schools will have one or two of these, but I think we're really the only school that I think really has all three of these things. So the first thing is our campus, actually. And so that's obviously one of the challenging elements this year. We love having people come to campus and get a feel for what it's like to be on campus and to go to school. And obviously this year we're limited by both the fact that our kids are remote, doing remote learning currently, and also even when we come back to campus and are in a hybrid setting, we won't be able to have visitors on campus. But our campus is one of the big differentiators for us. We've got 73 acres, wonderful facilities, playing fields and art spaces, and good classroom environments with great technology. And all of those things are, I think, really important to delivering the kind of program that we want to deliver. While I think the COVID situation is fresh in everyone's minds, and I think we're all doing our best to manage through it, the reality is for those of you who are looking at Overlake this year, whether it's for 5th or 6th grade or for 9th grade, while COVID will inevitably have an impact next year, on some level, and I don't think we know what that will be yet, at some point we will move through this crisis and we will be back on campus. And so I think thinking about sort of the longer term experience that your child will have, the on-campus experience at Overlake is a really important one. I think it's easy to think about a great campus as having an atmospheric benefit, right? Like it's just a wonderful place to be. We've got tall trees and trails, and kids are getting fresh air in between classes and that kind of thing. And that matters. That is, I think, something that's really important. But it also has a programmatic benefit. So, because we have so many resources on campus, that means that our programs take place on campus. And, that has the benefit from the standpoint of kids spending less time in cars and on buses going from one place to another. But it also has the benefit of building community. So, when you have your sports games on campus, when you have your arts performances on campus, what it means is that they're much more visible to the rest of the community than they are if they're, at a local park or away from campus. Inevitably, what you'll see, throughout the year is that, kids will finish one practice and then they'll walk down to, one of the other fields and watch their friends play a game. And so having that resource really makes the campus the center of life for Overlake. And I think that makes it, that's a really unique thing. I think we all, as independent schools, view ourselves as communities, but I think that having that resource really helps us in doing that. And certainly, I think that's one of the reasons we're really looking forward to being back on campus when it's safe to do so. So I think that's the first thing. The second thing that differentiates us is our size. So we have about 530 students typically in grades 5 through 12. The way that it usually breaks down is about 310 kids in the high school and about 220 in the middle school. And we really think that that's the right number, in terms of the magic number, I would say, to be big enough to offer lots of different classes, activities, opportunities, co-curriculars, that kind of thing. But small enough that we really count on kids to be involved in order to make any one of those experiences robust and positive. For schools that are a lot bigger than ours, the bar to trying something new can be really intimidating. If you've never tried an activity and you want to go out for a team or something like that, and everyone has been doing it their entire lives, that it takes a lot to, particularly when you're a middle or a high schooler, to work up the nerve to do something like that. Conversely, at schools that are significantly smaller, you just don't have enough kids to offer as many different kinds of experiences. And so we really think we found that middle ground there that allows us to do that. We have lots of different activities, but kids try lots of different things. They are constantly sort of stepping outside their comfort zone and exploring, and that's really what middle and high school is about. It's a journey of self-discovery and figuring out what you do and what you don't like, and you can only do that by trying things. And so I think our size really lets us create an environment where that becomes part of the culture for Overlake. So size is the second thing. And then, the third thing is we proudly view ourselves as a liberal arts school. We are in an era of increasing specialization in a lot of different fields. And certainly within schools, that's true too. So, there are schools that focus on STEM fields. There are schools that focus on the arts. There are schools that focus on athletics, right? And I think for all of those schools, they're making those decisions for reasons that make sense for them. And I think as families within a market thinking about what your educational options are, having different schools with different focuses can be a really positive thing because it gives you choice. But we are a liberal arts school, and we believe that the way to best prepare students for life is to give them broad exposure to a variety of different disciplines. And so we are focused on really providing quality experiences across the board, right? And making sure that students are accessing those experiences. Because regardless of what they decide to do in college or the rest of their lives, having those experiences of learning the skills, the life skills that are so important in a variety of different ways and in a variety of different environments, we believe is what gives them the tools to be successful later on. So I think, like I say, from a differentiation standpoint, I think that the combination of those three things is what makes Overlake different than the other schools in this market: our campus, our size, and then our liberal arts focus. So hopefully that answered that question there. Let me see, what else do we have here? What are the requirements for SAT tests for grade 5 admission? So as I mentioned before, we are testing optional for students who are applying to grade 5 this year, which means exactly that. You can either take standardized testing, which really, given where we are and the options that are available to you, would be the ISEE. So you can either take it or you can not take it. Or you can take it and not give us the scores, whatever makes sense for you. I think oftentimes people are worried that when we say things are optional, that they're not really optional, and they really are optional. If you want to submit those scores, you can. They will become a part of the applicant's file. But if you don't want to, there's no penalty to that. And conversely, there's no necessary benefit to submitting them. So whatever makes sense for your family and your child, we're comfortable with. Let's see. So here again is another SAT question. If it's optional for grade 5, how would we compare students? So this is the question about what I just sort of addressed about essentially whether this is really an optional thing, and it is. I think in terms of how we're going to look at it in the process, I think it's important to understand that whether we're talking about 5th grade or 6th grade or 9th grade or anything, what we're trying to do in the admission process is two different things. One is to determine whether we think students can be successful at Overlake in the grade that they're applying to. And success is, not just academic success, although that's part of it. It's academic, social, emotional, sort of across the board. The second thing that we're trying to do in the process is put a class together. So we're fortunate enough that, over the years, we have more applicants that we think can be successful at Overlake than we have space in the class. And so what that means is we are able to look at how we put different groups of kids together in order to create a successful experience for all of them. So putting a group of kids together that can support one another, that can push one another, that can bring different perspectives and different skills and different interests. And so we're always looking at sort of how we can fit that group of kids together in different ways. So when keeping in mind that those are the two questions that we're trying to address, different parts of the application give us different kinds of information that allow us to address those two things. There's no specific weight to any part of any piece of the application in the process. We're looking at it holistically. And the reason is because if you understand that we have applicants coming from a huge number of schools and school environments, different backgrounds, different life experiences, that kind of thing, their applications look very different. So we can take, say, teacher recommendations as an example, right? There may be one student who's coming from a school where the teacher knows them very well. Maybe they've had that teacher for multiple years. We're going to get certain kinds of information from that teacher that may look very different from the kinds of information that we get from a student who's at maybe a much larger school who doesn't have a real strong relationship with their teacher. But we still need to answer the same question for both of those applicants. And so we're always looking at each element of the application in context with everything else that's there. And so as a result, there's no sort of specific weight. And so to answer the question about standardized testing tells us something. If it didn't, we wouldn't ask for it at all. It tells us what a student knows on a particular test on a particular day, but it doesn't tell us everything. And so, whether or not we have standardized testing, we're always going to look at that within the context of the rest of the file. And so, for students who are applying to fifth grade, who submit test scores and it becomes a part of their file, we'll look at that information and we'll look at it along with their teacher recommendations and the information that we get from the school and what the students say about themselves and the information that we get from the interview experience and what the parents have to say about them. And it may tell us some really good information, and it may not, right? And so it will just depend on what's in each applicant's individual file. So, hopefully that answers the question. I mean, I think we're fundamentally, like I say, trying to answer those two questions of can the student be successful, and then how do we put this group of students together, and different pieces of information help us answer those questions in different ways. Let's see. Question here about college counseling, and so and then I guess specifically, students who go to highly selective schools. So in terms of college placement, in terms of where students actually go to college, I'd refer you back to our website, and I think I highlighted at the beginning sort of the college counseling section. If you go to the report to colleges, you can see where our students have gone to school over, I think it's over 4 or 5 years. And the reason that schools do that is because schools go in and out of fashion with kids. For a few years, one school will be really popular and then another school will be really popular. So if you want to kind of get a representative understanding where kids go at any school, it's good to look at a couple years to get that sense. What I will say about where our kids go to school is two things. First of all, they go to great schools. Primarily, they go to a school that is one of their first choice schools. But I think what's most important is that they go to schools that are a good fit for their needs and what they're looking for in a college experience. And so, I think a lot of families, particularly when you're thinking about making an investment in education to a place like Overlake, you're thinking about what the value add is in terms of opportunities that your child is going to have. And I think that when we think about what the value add is, it's particularly as it relates to sort of the college experience. One, it's the ability for kids to get involved in a lot of different things and discover the things that are important to them and who they are and who they want to be. Because understanding who you are helps you understand what the best environment is going to be for you at the college level. And then the second piece is we have a really incredible college counseling staff. And so they are great at working with students and their families in navigating the college process, which can be very stressful and and I don't think anyone would deny that. And so the value add in college counseling here at Overlake or at any school is really on that second word. It's the counseling piece, right? We don't make the decisions about where students go to school. Those colleges make decisions about who they're going to offer places to, and the kids make decisions about where they're going to go to school. But we do control the kind of experience that families have as they go through that process. And so that's a really important element of it. But again, if you want to see where kids go to school, you can find that information on our website. Let's see, there's a question here. How important are sports and especially soccer in your school? So I think athletics are a big part of the entire Overlake experience. I mean, as I mentioned, we have lots of different ways for kids to get involved in the Overlake community, and we really count on kids being involved. And so athletics is a part of that experience. In a given year, typically like 80 to 85% of our students, something like that, are involved in athletics. Athletics are a great way to learn some of those life skills that we want kids to take with them. And it's also, I think, important for kids to participate in athletics because they are going to be doing that with the same group of kids that they're doing other things, their classes, their arts, their clubs, that kind of thing. And I think that that's a really important part of the experience. For many of our kids who are involved in activities, they move from one activity with kids who are, really serious about that activity to another activity with kids who are really serious about that activity. And so I think oftentimes what that means is they don't see, because those different activities are with different groups of kids, they don't see any of the kids that they're in different things with fully, right? They only see one dimension of them. And so particularly for kids who are involved in a lot of competitive activities and that kind of thing, it becomes difficult to understand that everyone has strengths and weaknesses. Everyone is a work in progress. And as we want our kids to develop a growth mindset and understanding that they can get better at anything that they want to get better at. But it also understands that it also is important to understand that not everyone is good at everything, right? So I think one of the real values in being in a comprehensive school experience like Overlake, where you're doing classes and athletics and arts and community service and all of those different kinds of things with the same group of students, is you recognize that the human beings that you're going through this experience with have strengths and weaknesses, right? So that kid who might be struggling in your math class is amazing on the soccer field, or that kid who seems a little reluctant to go out on stage in their theater class might be really passionate about history. And so I think what that helps students to develop is a sense of empathy. And I think that's something that is important. I think it also is important for them to understand when they reach a point where they're struggling with something, to understand that isn't a deficiency on their part. It's just an opportunity for them to grow. So I think that that's a really important part. So I've sort of generalized this a little bit, but athletics, I think, are a really important part of the school experience here, and kids participate pretty widely. That said, kids are always sort of stretching themselves. So, I mean, if for kids who don't sort of view themselves as athletes, there's still a place for them in our athletics program. Our sports are no cut. So if you want to do something, there is a team for you, right? Every year when it comes to wintertime, and basketball is the sport in the wintertime at the middle school level, there's tons of kids who sign up, and then at that point, if there are more kids than places that we sort of earmark, that our athletic department goes out and they hire more coaches and they create more teams and they schedule more games, because we want kids to have the opportunity to grow and to learn. So hopefully that addressed that question. Okay. See, that's another question about college placement. Okay, I think that's most of the questions that have been submitted. Again, if you have other questions, please feel free to submit them. I'm happy to answer them. One of the questions I do get asked a lot is, what does a successful student look like at Overlake? And I think that that's probably an important thing to understand as you think about whether Overlake feels like a good fit for your child and for your family. So, typically when I think about student success at Overlake, there are three things that sort of come to mind. So the first is that we do have a challenging academic program. And when you look at the amount of time kids spend in different parts of the Overlake experience, certainly they're spending a considerable amount of time in the classroom environment. And so it's important that students have the skills they need to be successful in that environment, right? And so, as I mentioned, one of the things we're looking for in the admission process is the ability for students to be successful. That's a part of it, the academic skills that it takes to be successful within our academic program. That said, as I just talked about a little bit, the Overlake experience is more than just an academic experience, right? It's a comprehensive experience that includes lots of different things, including the arts and athletics and service learning and experiential education and all sorts of different things. And so it's important that kids get involved. And so the students who find the most success here are kids who are willing to really kind of jump in and try new things, step outside their comfort zone, as I think I've said before. One of the things our middle school head is fond of saying is that Overlake is not a school for specialists, it's a school for generalists, right? And I think that that's very true, that we want students who are really willing to do a lot of different things. Students who have that one thing, right, that either they are very passionate about or their parents are very passionate about for them, and that's the thing that they want to do, don't get as much out of the Overlake experience as a student who's really willing to sort of sample from the buffet of different options that are available to them. Students who sort of disappear at the end of the school day and go and do some kind of intensive activity for the rest of the day and don't get involved in the non-academic side of things, or just don't get as much out of the experience. So I think the willingness and the ability to get involved and sort of step outside the comfort zone, try new things, sometimes you discover things that become a lifelong passion. Sometimes you finish an activity and your take is, okay, that was good and I learned something and I'm not going to do it again. And both of those things are great, right? Because it's about that discovery. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is, we view ourselves as a school community, right? And part of being a community is understanding that we have shared mission, shared values, right? I think the other piece of that is understanding that every person and every student's actions have an impact on the people around them. And if we want to be the kind of community that we want to be, we want kids and community members generally who have an understanding that is their responsibility, right? That their actions have an impact on the people around them. For our students, I think it's oftentimes really easy to see at Overlake because of, you know, something I talked about earlier, which is our small size, right? They're in small classroom environments, they're in small grade levels. The overall size of the Overlake community is a pretty manageable size. They know everyone in their grade, they know kids in the grades above and below them. So it's really easy to see how their actions can have an impact. But once they leave Overlake, they're going to move into larger and larger communities, right? College, life. And sometimes seeing the impact you have becomes a little bit harder, but it exists nonetheless. And so we want kids who understand that being a part of a community involves that, and have the capacity to continue to grow that sense as they move out from Overlake into the rest of the world. So I think those are the kinds of things that really make students successful at Overlake, and therefore those are the kinds of things that we're generally looking for when we go through the admission process. I see we have a couple more questions that have come in. When do you think you'll know more about SSATs? We're working on that, as I said earlier. We'll certainly post information about that on our website in Ravenna as soon as we know all of the information we need to know to make a decision, and once we make a decision. How many applicants do you get for each grade level entry point? Great question. I think people are always thinking about sort of the competitiveness of the applicant pool. It depends a little bit each year, but in recent years, we've typically get somewhere in the neighborhood of 150 to 200 applications for each of our entry points. So our entry points are 5th grade, 6th grade, and 9th grade. And then, you know, typically we're bringing in 32 to 34 students into our 5th grade. We're bringing in 30 to 32, 34, somewhere around that, depends on the 5th grade class a little bit, into our 6th grade. And then, you know, in a normal year, 9th grade, somewhere around 22 to 25 students into our 9th grade. So, you know, without a doubt, it's a competitive admission process, but you know, the numbers are not so large that we don't have the ability, I think, to get to know each applicant in the process. And that's why part of the reason that we have so many different elements to this application. I think sometimes when families start this process, they look at the list of things to do, and it can seem a little bit daunting and overwhelming. But the reason that we have so many different elements to our application is because we're doing our best to get to know each applicant, and that involves getting perspectives on the applicant from a variety of different places, from the applicant themselves, from teachers, from the school, from parents, from our own observations. And so, you know, really taking that time to get to know the student as best we can within the constraints of the process is an important element to our ability to make good decisions about student success and then how we put that class together. So, so that I think that's an important thing for us to consider. Yeah, so I think that's the last question there. So I think, you know, if you have additional questions about the application process or Overlake, you know, I would encourage you to reach out to us in the admission office. That's what we're here for. We're here to answer questions. We're here to help you through this process. We have a lot of resources that are available online. So I mentioned our website. We also have a Facebook page. But I would definitely encourage those of you who are thinking about applying to start the application process. And really that begins with creating your Ravenna account, and then you can sort of choose Overlake and whatever other schools you're interested in exploring. And then, you know, beginning that process. You have access to a lot more resources there, including the ability to sign up for things like our drive-through open house, which if you do want to see our campus, I'd be remiss to not plug that. We have a couple more opportunities. We do, while we can't have families sort of out and walking around on campus, we've created an experience that I think is safe for you as families visiting, safe for our staff and our kids. And one of the unique things about our campus is we do have the ability to bring people through the campus. You wouldn't normally drive on these paths, but we sort of open them up, and so you actually are able to drive through campus and have sort of an interactive experience with what's happening in some of the buildings. So if you're in Ravenna, you can sign up for that. We have one this weekend actually, and there's still places available at the different time slots there. And then we have another one coming up in December. So if you want to get a sense for what the place is like, that's something that you can do. But we'll have other events online. If you want to learn more about the school, we've got a number of other OWLS talks with different topics from different people within our school community, and you're welcome to join any of those. So with that, I will say thank you very much for joining us today. Like I said, if you have any questions, please reach out to us in the admission office, and have a good rest of your day. Take care.